Hello and welcome to another episode of Double Barrel Gaming. I'm your host, MrBooMStickXL, and on today's episode, it's a bit of a somber one. The reason I'm doing this video today is because I really want to give my take on the closure of Boss Key Studios that just occurred yesterday. If you're unfamiliar with this studio, they are responsible for the development of Lawbreakers, which was of course an Overwatch clone. Trying to cash in on the Battle Royale hype, they released a game last month called Radical Heights, which unfortunately was a clone of Fortnite. The only difference is that it had an 80s theme, which I actually thought was pretty cool. Sad news gripped the development industry yesterday when Bleszinski announced the closure of Boss Key Studios. It's always sad news when you hear the closure of any studio, regardless of what system they make games for. There are a total of 65 employees now that are going to be affected by this closure who are now out of work. And of course, that is always concerning. But fret not, because this industry is tight, regardless of what people tell you on Twitter and YouTube. Several developers, including Epic Games, have tweeted their support for these former Boss Key employees. The gaming development community does stick together, and this is another perfect example of that. Opening their doors in a time of need to fellow developers is something I enjoy seeing. The real question here is, could all of this heartbreak have been avoided? And the answer is, absolutely. You see, this story isn't about the 65 employees of Boss Key Studios not having the proper talent to make incredible games. It's about the arrogance of their leader, Bleszinski. If you've been gaming since Gears of War, you'll know that Bleszinski is a guy that wears his attitude and his talent on his right sleeve. For better or for worse, he has no problem giving you the middle finger if he disagrees with you. A giant character flaw that he's also known for. I absolutely understand that if you're a talented individual, you might want to flaunt it, but you gotta remember, rubbing that salt in other people's faces is never a good thing. I'm gonna now read you his tweet where he talks about the closure of the studio, and it is heartfelt. As of today, Boss Key Productions is effectively no more. 4 years ago, I set out to make a world-class video game studio, and I hired some of the best talent in the video game industry. They worked tirelessly to produce quality productions, and while we had our ups and downs, I'd like to think we had fun doing it. Lawbreakers was a great game that unfortunately failed to gain traction. And in a last-ditch attempt, we scrambled to do our take on a huge battle royale genre with Radical Heights, which was well received. However, it was little too late. As for myself, I'm gonna take some time off and reflect. I need to focus on myself and family, as well as my Aussie Teddy, who is slowly fading from us. Video games will forever be a part of who I am, and I hope to make something new again someday. However, I need to withdraw and take some time. To those of you who have supported myself and the studio these last 4 years, thank you from the bottom of my heart, and everyone who came to work for me. Please note the servers for Radical Heights will remain up in the near future. Thanks again, Cliff. Now, when you hear this, you think the guy is being sincere, and to be completely honest, when he wrote this, I'm sure he was. But it's what he says in some tweets that I'm going to read to you that make me think otherwise. He says in a tweet, "Got more hugs than middle fingers today, so that has to stand for something." Even though Bleszinski is unpredictable and raw at times, I will come to his defense on a particular tweet that someone called him the F word, which I thought was disgusting to say the least. But now I want to get into why I believe Bleszinski is responsible for putting 65 employees of Boss Key Studios out of work. If you've kept your ear to the ground since last E3 when Lawbreakers was going to be announced as a PlayStation 4 exclusive, you would immediately think that Bleszinski was doing it to screw over Xbox gamers, but here's why we thought that. Instead of being a well-business-minded individual who's responsible for the employment of over 60 people for Boss Key Studios, Bleszinski took to Twitter to basically shit all over Xbox fans and even called the Xbox One X-Bone when describing the system. To be completely honest here, I don't fault Cliff Bleszinski or Boss Key Studios for choosing the PlayStation 4 as its platform to launch Lawbreakers. It makes perfect business sense. If you look at the PlayStation's user base at that particular time, it was over 70 million systems in the wild. But instead of saying that he had a small team that could only work on one platform at a time, he took to Twitter to make Xbox fans not only feel unwanted, but unworthy of playing his game. This shenanigans went on for almost a week. This is where I'm going to get real. You see, I'm an older gamer, and I'm pushing 48 this September. So I've seen a few things. The one thing I've also noticed is that being humble is important, and that is something that Cliff Bleszinski does not have in his DNA. His arrogance cost him his company and the jobs of 65 employees of Boss Key Studios, and that is really sad. I'm going to tell you something that my dad taught me when I was a kid. He always used to tell me, son, treat people how you want to be treated. My dad also used to tell me that karma is a bitch and that she's vengeful. And this is a perfect example of karma coming up and biting Cliff and his company in the ass. One of the main things I hope happens from this is that the 65 employees of Boss Key Studios find work immediately so that their families aren't affected by this closure. Secondly, I do hope Cliff Bleszinski does reflect and come back a better man, also a better developer. No one likes eating humble pie, but sometimes it's for the best. I hope you found this episode of Double Barrel Gaming insightful and thought-provoking. If you did, please hit that like button, share this on social media, and also please consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks again for watching. Have an awesome day.